Welcome to this third film in the series of working with organisational cultures. The first two films looked at how cultures are formed, when they might be addressed, what kind of methods and tools could be used to understand and appreciate cultures and then experiment with change. This film concentrates on the role of the leader in helping to form and shape cultures, in supporting change, and also the role of leadership development programs in supporting leaders as they go through change programs. So, how do leaders actually form and shape cultures?
And there are many threads to a culture. So a leader has many threads he can draw on. You know, the kind of metrics that we use, the kind of people that he appoints, the kind of processes that are introduced, the organisation structure. These are things that are threads readily available to him. There are other threads, though, that leaders are less aware of that they're using, which is how they spend their time, who they spend their time with. These things get noticed. Which cabin of the aircraft do they fly in? You know, all of these small, we call them low-profile symbols, are actually what anthropologists say really create the culture, and that people pay very close attention. Weaving is a verb. Webs need to be woven. So for us, a leader is a weaver among weavers when he joins in processes of finding new ideas, finding new ways of thinking, and doing that through conversation with people, rather than talking at people, sitting down and being part of the journey of discovery.
Do you have any particular expectations of the top team in actually supporting and nurturing this work?
I've been involved in this work to varying degrees for 20 years. I have never seen a successful cultural change intervention succeed, really, or bring about meaningful change without really serious leadership involvement and commitment from the very beginning. And so I do think that leaders need to think very carefully before embarking on any form of organisational development and change, and trying to understand, do we have the time, the energy and the resources to engage in this change process now? And do we see ourselves part of it? Because one of the patterns that happens quite often in organisations is the leaders somehow assuming that they are separate from the issues that they're perceiving, rather than somehow participating in the culture and perpetuating the dynamics that they might find frustrating.
Adrian, talk about that particular leader. What did she actually do?
The first thing that she did was to host us and to sponsor and champion the initiative, to legitimate it, to give funds to it, and to say, yeah, I know this is going to take time, and I know it's going to take people away from their jobs from time to time, but that's okay. So she acted as host, she acted as champion. But then initially she held back, and in a sense, I think what people said to us is she was waiting to see whether this was going to work or whether it wasn't going to, you know. As things started to develop organically and people became more interested and more involved and new great ideas started to surface, she became more interested. And what we noticed is she started to attend events, informally, you know, joining some of the conversations. But what was really significant was people noticed her presence.
I think there is both a formal and an informal role for leaders. I think from a formal point of view, articulating, communicating, advocating, getting out there and talking to people about their hopes, their dreams for what the organisation could be, sharing real-time information without scaring the pants off everybody, but sharing what they know about why a change might be needed. I think where it often requires more of leaders is in the informal. If leaders have become very successful within the current culture, at some level they must be carrying the signifiers of that culture in their own behaviour. else they wouldn't have risen to the top. They are the most successful carriers of the current way of working and being. And they need to let go of some of the things that's made them successful.
And so leaders are really quite important, both about enabling that to happen, to giving that some kind of authority, but to also be very clear about how that, you know, what's the language, what's the frame, what's the narrative that goes with this, and to show that on some level they personally have some skin in the game and that they are prepared to participate.
Andrew, how do formal leadership programs support cultural change?
I mean, I think most organisational kind of culture change initiatives require some leadership development work. In my experience, the leadership development work needs to come reasonably early in the change process, but not right at the beginning, because the leaders that come on the development process need to kind of have some felt need that actually we're engaged in something together, that they need to feel some involvement in, you know, or some responsibility for having to change their behaviour. But they also need to connect their participation on the leadership development programme with some higher arching kind of goals or intentions on behalf of the organisation. I mean, one could think about leadership development as an experiment within the existing culture. You're trying to interrupt a pattern of leadership by raising leaders' awareness of how they are participating in these kind of cultural patterns and dynamics. Now, quite often, with awareness comes some level of anxiety about, well, I can see what I could do differently, but I don't feel confident about acting and doing things differently. So leadership development can be very helpful there in giving some skills, some methodologies to leaders, but also giving them a safe place where they can experiment with each other before experimenting outside within the organisation. What we're trying to do, at Ashridge is bring together organisation and executive development. We're starting to see that our clients are questioning the traditional business model of business schools, where you're working with a top team, you bring in content knowledge, you know, about the latest ways of thinking, you deliver that, and you say, right, okay, this is the latest ideas around strategy, supply chains, culture, off you go and do it. That model, in our opinion, doesn't work. What does work is kind of helping our clients to really identify, well, what are the kind of key business issues that they have? What are the systemic issues that underpin those issues? And how do we work with leaders to support them in bringing about change within the organisation?
So we've seen how leaders can play a formative role in developing cultures. We've also looked at their key sponsorship role of any programs of change. We've also looked at how leadership development programs can provide space for experimentation and the development of skills. In our last film, we're going to look at how we at Ashridge think about organisations and how we can work with clients on cultural change programs.